Hello everyone. This is not a story for the faint of heart. Today, we will be stepping into the darkness of the most gruesome cases, where evil not only exists, but also leaves bloody and haunting traces. This is Real Gruesome Murder Cases, a series of true stories about murders that made the whole world shudder. If you are ready to face the cold truth and the gruesome corners of humanity, come with me to delve deeper into each case. I won't be home for Christmas. Life can be messy, complicated, difficult. Sometimes you can just lose yourself in all of it, and in the process, you can lose sight of the things that actually matter. And then one day a storm comes out of the clear blue sky, and you get blown overboard by the tempest, and all is lost in the blink of an eye. This is what happened to me. I just got caught up in all of the things that don't really matter. Money, career status, an address in the right part of town and elite private schools for the kids, and new luxury import autos, and Swiss-made wristwatches with tasteful but recognizable brand logos. Material things. Then came a day when I realized how unimportant it all was, but it was too late. Still, at first I tried to keep up the pretense of normality in the face of immeasurable loss. I had already bought the 12-foot Douglas fir Christmas tree and put up the holiday decorations all around the house. Family was flying in from 3 different states to visit for the holiday. I had arranged car service from the airport for everyone, a catered gourmet dinner for Christmas Eve, nice gifts for all, and I even took the time to memorize a heartwarming toast to the whole family before we sat down to eat. In the end, I had to just junk this because of the references to my wife and children. More than that, really. It just didn't work at all anymore. What was I supposed to do? I felt some strange obligation to appear unfazed, composed, in control of my emotions and my world. I don't know. That has always been my way, or at least the image I have always wanted to project. It's hard to say how much of it was ever truly real, and how much I just manufactured, for whatever reason. And it doesn't matter any longer anyway. It all happened on the evening of December 23rd, and everyone was flying in the next day. I was just numb afterwards, and didn't have the time or motivation for all the phone calls before those flights took off in the morning, so I was left with no choice but to inform everyone of what happened when they arrived at our house that day. My house. Once they were all there, and I had dodged the uncomfortable questions for as long as I possibly could, I gave a very different and mostly improvised speech from the one I had originally planned. Somehow, I made it to the end with dry eyes, though no one else did. I cried enough the previous night at the hospital. I wasn't sad anymore. I was just angry now. Well, folks, it seems that everyone has had a chance to grab a beverage, and although we are not fully gathered together as a family right now, I would like to proceed with some very unfortunate news that I have to share at this time. Not exactly a toast. Nothing like a toast, actually. The opposite of a toast. Just some words I have to say. I took a deep breath and a long, slow sip of my Macallan Scotch. I felt all the eyes on me, and I thought about what I should say, what I could say. I hadn't planned this out. I tried. I just couldn't. I want to thank you all for coming this far to spend the Christmas holiday with us, but I am afraid that us is just me now. Yesterday evening, around 6:30 p.m., Melanie and the kids were driving home from the mall down the road when they were T-boned at the intersection of Torrance and Sepulveda by a 25-year-old off-duty sheriff's deputy named Kyle Langtree, who ran a red light. All 3 of them were killed, but the sheriff's deputy, driving a large SUV, only sustained a concussion and some minor injuries. He is still in St. Mary's right now, but expected to be released within a day or two. I paused and drained off the rest of my scotch. Everyone stared at me, their faces fixed in various expressions of shock and horror and disbelief, the tears already starting to fall. Hands were raised to cover mouths. I took another deep breath and continued, not even knowing what to say next, only knowing that I had to say something. I kind of muttered the next part down towards my shoes. The local news channels are all reporting that this sheriff's deputy had just left a holiday party at a bar down the street, and the LAPD officer who was first on the scene breathalyzed this guy, and he apparently blew a 1.8 BAC, more than twice the legal level for DUI. When the LAPD cop radioed this in, he was advised that this sheriff's deputy was the younger brother of both the local DA and the U.S. congressman representing this district. This was picked up over the police scanners used by several local news outlets. Instead of being taken to jail, he was taken to St. Mary's, like I said. Apparently, he also had 2 prior DUIs that were both dismissed for no apparent reason. You can read about it all here in today's paper if you want. Front page. I dropped a copy of the local newspaper on the table. I paused again. I didn't know what else to say. My older brother Jamie came up and gave me a powerful hug and whispered some kind words in my ear and cried some tears onto my neck and collar. My Aunt Jane approached me, but then stopped, not knowing what to do. I didn't blame her. I didn't either, but I did my best. You are all my dearest friends and family, and I thank you all so much for coming to be here. I am just so sorry that it has come under these terrible circumstances. I set my empty glass on a coaster on the table. Somehow it was still important for me to appear unrattled, composed. The coaster was somehow still important. We all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family, and you have all shown and proven that by being here right now. I love you all dearly, and I'm so sorry to have to share this terrible news with you at this time. I pretended to get choked up. Then I lowered my head and excused myself and went to my bedroom to get what I needed as my family broke out in open gasps and cries and barely restrained sobs and sorrows in the living room. I quietly slipped out the side door and drove my Mercedes AMG GT to St. Mary's Hospital. I parked it in a handicapped spot when I got there. I wouldn't be needing it any longer. I decided to leave it to my nephew Nicholas once I had a chance to meet with my lawyer. He was a good kid who just graduated from Penn State, and I knew he loved that car. He deserved it. I decided to set him up with some cash too, just to help him get started. You never know what life has in store for you. I certainly didn't. And that's how I ended up here, sitting in this small cell in the LA County Jail, spending Christmas Day all by myself, eating a bologna sandwich for dinner, or trying to anyway. I don't have much appetite. This is the first time in my entire life that I have spent Christmas alone. I will be on suicide watch for the next 48 hours, and after that, the wheels and gears of the legal system will make their slow and inevitable turns, and I will end up in Pelican Bay or San Quentin or someplace like that for the rest of my life. Murder 1, assault with a deadly weapon, menacing, illegal parking in a designated handicap space. Haha. They have me. They have me dead to rights. They have me on video for all of it. I don't care. It was unfortunate that I had to put down that security guard who tried to stop me from reaching Deputy Langtry's hospital room, though. I shot low, in the center of his thigh. Hopefully he will be okay. Hopefully I missed the femoral artery. I tried my best, but it all happened pretty fast and I'm no marksman. It could have been worse, I guess. At least he was already in a level 1 trauma unit, Young guy. I feel bad about that part. They won't tell me anything about how he's doing, or if he has a wife and kids or anything like that. I hope he's okay. I will leave some money for him too once I meet with my lawyer and update my last will and testament, for whatever that might be worth. I don't know what else I can do. I just feel really bad about it. I never wanted to hurt anyone else. Anyway, they can't keep me on suicide watch forever. And like I said, we all have to do what we all have to do for the love of our family. I did what I had to do for the love of my family. I have no regrets. Anyone want the rest of this bologna sandwich? I'm not hungry. Merry Christmas. I think this one will probably be my last, but I hope you enjoy many more, engulfed in the warmth and love of all your family and friends. I just need to find a rope, just another dead girl underwater. Trigger warning. Implications of death, violence, and sexual harassment. By the time the fisherman finds me, I will have been dead for 33 hours, 6 minutes, and 29 seconds. 18 hours since the police declared me missing. 15 hours since Zoe told my biology teacher that my tent was empty, that I hadn't returned from the party we'd snuck out to the night before. Careful, quiet, every twig a possible snitch. It was exhilarating, our hearts pounding, the smell of pine and seaweed thick in the air, and the moon a perfectly curved sickle. Zoe held my sweaty hand and didn't let go until we'd passed the tents and joined the others by the lake. The music on someone's phone was turned down just low enough for us to make out Billie Eilish's raspy voice. One of the guys offered us a beer, kept cool in the pitch-black lurking water. I remember thinking I couldn't tell where the lake ended and the forest began. The first article published by a local newspaper reads, "Promising high school student missing after night swim in lake." Shortly after, the water rescue service and fire brigade take over the search. Dogs comb the area, their noses trailing through the damp earth. A human chain forms, people moving slowly through the woods, eyes scanning for any sign of me. Even a helicopter hovers overhead, its whirring blades slicing through the heavy, charged air. The search drags on for hours, stretching into the twilight, yet the woods remain silent. The police begin to ask questions. When was she last seen? What was she wearing? Had she been drinking? Did she seem out of character? Angry? Sad? Suicidal? No, and no. She was singing. She was dancing. She seemed happy. When the fisherman finds my body, miles away from where I was last seen, certainty sets in. The autopsy reveals a hematoma on my head and purple spots behind my ears. The coroners examine the water in my lungs and confirm that I wasn't dead before entering the water. I died by drowning. My classmates are questioned again. Zoe claims to have left early, while I stayed behind with her twin brother, Tom, who has been in love with me since middle school. Tom's behavior strikes the police as odd. He insists he barely spoke to me, despite people seeing us leave the party together for a few minutes. When my body is examined, traces of Tom's skin are found on my clothes, trapped between the fabric layers. Still, Tom sticks to his story, perhaps because the truth would embarrass him for some reason. Or maybe he's just afraid of the questions that would follow and the scrutiny that might come with them. Tom is right, you know, in the broadest sense. We really only exchanged 3 or 4 sentences that night, but only because Tom's mouth was otherwise occupied with me. I had enjoyed every second of it, and looking back, I wish I'd given him a real chance. But I was too worried about what other people might think. So, as usual, I brushed him off, leaving him to walk away from the party feeling hurt. Cassandra insists she heard Zoe and me arguing that night, just before Zoe headed back to the campsite. According to her, we were fighting over Tom. Of course she would say that. What else would two girls argue about if not a boy? Cassandra even claims that Zoe pushed me, though Zoe denies it vehemently. She denies discussing Tom at all, insisting it was about something else, something that wouldn't come to light until much later, when our biology teacher became a suspect. But Cassandra holds firm to her version. The thing about Cassandra is that she's always been a shadow, the kind of girl whose name teachers forget after 2 weeks of spring break. Kelly, Cindy, Carrie, something with a C though, right? So, when she finally gets the chance to talk to the police and be part of the investigation, she jumps at it. Unfortunately, Cassandra isn't much help to the investigators. She leaves the party at 2 a.m., just 40 minutes before I die, leaving me alone with a group of guys who've brought along some tranquilizers. Sitting next to them felt like being stuck in a fever dream, where Jacques Derrida explains quantum physics at a frat party. At some point, I decided it was time to head back. One of the guys casually asked if I needed someone to walk with me, and I said yes, but no one moved. I glanced back, the campsite faintly visible through the cold, white light filtering through the pines. It was only a few meters away, just beyond the trees. I'd walked this path for days, never once feeling threatened by the shadows in the bushes. But tonight, that sinking feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. Still, I refused to be that girl. The one who got scared at every creak in the dark. The one who needed someone to hold her hand for a few steps. So I stood up and said I'd walk alone. Instead of sticking to the dark trail, though, I decided to take a small detour along the riverbank, a bit longer, a bit lighter, and hopefully a bit safer. One of the guys told me to text him when I made it to my tent, but when I didn't, no one even noticed. 16 days after my death, suspicion begins to shift toward our biology teacher. Devin, one of my classmates, reveals that he had felt ill that night and went looking for the teacher's tent, only to find it empty. Soon after, the teacher's behavior takes a strange turn. He starts making inconsistent statements that don't add up. One day, he calls Zoe into his office after class, where he insists that his earlier proposal to her, before the trip, had been nothing but a joke. She understood that, right? It was sarcasm, he says, claiming that what he really meant was that if she wanted to improve her grades, she should consider attending a tutoring service. And this is where Cassandra steps in for the final time. She confesses that she visited our biology teacher after the party, and that they went to the boathouse, where, according to her, nothing bad happened. He was just there for me. The biology teacher is immediately suspended, but the case against him has nothing to do with mine, as Cassandra's alibi clears him. Meanwhile, the suspicions surrounding Zoe and Tom are too weak to pursue. My case remains unsolved, and eventually people begin to accept the idea that it was just a tragic accident, that I must have hit my head when I jumped into the water. They agree that I seemed unhappy, not just that night, but in general, and that my relationship with my parents, who expected me to excel in everything, was strained. Perhaps the pressure had finally got to her. It's all unsatisfying, of course. Unsatisfying for the local magazine, whose updates eventually dry up. Unsatisfying for the police, left with yet another unsolved case on their desk. Unsatisfying for my parents, who, decades later, will say in an interview that not a day goes by that they don't think of their little girl. Maybe one day, a classmate will write a college essay about my case, reflecting on how it taught them that life can end in an instant. Maybe my story will end up on a true crime podcast, or perhaps Netflix will stretch it into a tightly structured 8-episode miniseries where my body is discovered just 3 minutes in. Enough time for viewers to decide if they'll keep watching, or maybe none of this happens and I'll fade away, like countless other women who are silenced every day simply for being born the wrong sex. It doesn't matter who profits from my story. It doesn't even matter if they eventually find the two men I crossed paths with on my way back to the campsite, in the wrong place at the wrong time. None of this matters, because in the end, I'm just another dead girl underwater. You have no idea what you are getting into. I am no saint, but no one really is. Some people are less evil. Some people are more evil. I have done things I am not proud of, and will have to live with the consequences once they come. I do, however, refuse to feel guilt for what I have done. There are reasons behind my actions, and no one will convince me they are not for the greater good. I am writing here in my diary to be able to get it off my chest, as I cannot speak to anyone about it. I wish I could scream it from the top of my lungs, but I can't. If the secret comes out, it probably will be huge. The local media are already talking about it, and when they catch whoever did it, it will be loud. In my mind, I am a hero, but in people's eyes, I will not be. If anyone is reading this, probably after I have been caught, know this: I refuse to feel bad about it. I meant what I did every time. My heart is pounding with excitement, but I close my notebook and rest my head on the wall behind me. I've been doing my assignments for over a year already, but even thinking about them makes my heart race. It gives me rush, flushes my cheeks, and keeps me motivated to keep going. I love everything about it. I look at the time on my watch and get off the bed. Time for my double shift at the bar. I put on one of my tightest blouses with low cleavage, comfortable jeans, and tie my hair in half up, half down style. Touch of lipstick, mascara, shoes, and I am ready to go. As I walk out of the house, I feel the cold breeze tickle my skin and I shiver. I hate cold. As fast as I can, I lock the door and rush to the car. When I arrive at the bar, there are quite a few customers in already, even though it is only 5 p.m. I drop my bag off at my locker and wash my hands before I walk out to the main room. The music isn't very loud yet, thankfully. The outside daylight is still shining through, ruining the night out vibe, and people are divided between drinking coffees or beers. No spirits in their hands just yet. I make small talk with the colleague I'm taking over from before they leave, and I make my way to the right side of the bar to check if all fruits and garnishes are restocked and ready for the night. For those who never worked at a bar, they never are after a day shift. I slice lemons and oranges, moving on to the limes, when I hear the sound of a metal knocking gently on the polished wooden bar. I look up and immediately smile. My partner in crime is here. She is the most gorgeous woman I have ever met. Has long, curly black hair, bright blue eyes, and a smile I could not stop thinking about. I pour her a whiskey on the rocks and without a word, let her casually look around for the first 10 minutes. "Is your cockroach here already?" I ask, and she shakes her head. "I don't expect him here so early," she replies with a soft sight. "Besides, I wanted to give you some attention before I see him." I smile and roll my eyes. "Lizzie, keep your flirting skills for the boys. I know what a sneaky little snake you are." She laughs at my joke, but doesn't reply. "How did you meet this one?" She grabs her glass and swirls it around, watching the almost melted ice cubes float in circles. "I accidentally bumped into him at the grocery store, very conveniently wearing one of my cutest dresses. We have been chatting on my fake phone for a week now. And he is definitely the one that did it?" I almost whisper, leaning closer towards her face. "Yes, Polly. He did do all of those unspeakable things to that girl a year ago. She whispers back, and I can smell the whiskey coming from her breath. Then his rich daddy hired a lawyer, paid off some of the important people, and the cockroach is enjoying his life. She puts the glass down and straightens back in her chair. Not for long, though. We make small talk as the time goes, in between me serving customers until about 6 p.m. when the cockroach walks in. He is a tall man with brown, messy hair, sharp jawline, and dressed nicely in some expensive clothes. I can't tell you what brand they are because I know nothing about it, but the way he wears them with cockiness, I can tell he spent money. His dad's money, I remind myself, and continue wiping the already clean bar, trying to make myself look busy. Liz gets up from her chair, greets him with a kiss on the cheek, and sits back down in front of me. They order a round of drinks, and she starts to work her magic. They spend hours on chatting and laughing, although I know Liz is faking it. She always does. When the clock strikes 9 p.m. and her date is pretty tipsy, they order the next round of drinks. I make them and turn my back to the camera to grab the lemon off the cutting board with the pill between it and my finger, and I drop it in his drink. When he starts talking incoherently, Liz grabs his arm and quietly walks him out of the bar. I wait a few minutes before I ask my colleague to look after the bar as I need a quick break and leave as well. I find them in a back alley, the cockroach sitting sloppily on the floor, resting his back and head on the wall, and Liz standing above him, looking at her phone. As soon as I walk up to them, she looks up. I spoke to his victim. The girl was still so upset about what happened. She whispers, with anger in her eyes. This piece of... He took something away from her she will never get back. He deserves what is coming his way. I don't reply, but nod in agreement. I look at the guy's face and feel disgusted that he not only felt it was okay to do what he did, but also decided consequences are not for him to handle. My stomach feels tight, something heavy like rocks growing inside it. I am not sure if it is from nerves, stress, disgust, or excitement from what is coming. It is Liz's time to deal with the man, and I need to get back to work soon enough. I help her tie his hands and feet, put him in the boot of the rented car, and turn to Liz. He should have admitted and faced the punishment, I hear Liz say as she slowly walks towards the driver's door. She isn't looking at me, and I am not sure if she is talking to herself or me. He is a gross, creepy cockroach who has done something horrible, and he needs to pay. The smug smile he had on his face when the case was dismissed, knowing he got away with it. I see her shake her head in the streetlight falling on her from above. Well, he didn't. They don't anymore. I whisper back and walk into the bar. HIM. I can feel the headache getting worse as the shouts don't end. Mr. Robertson came to report his son's missing, but ever since we took all the information and said we will look into it, he has been shouting at various officers. He wanted the whole station up at this moment and searching for his son. We tried explaining to him that we will not be able to find him within the next hour, so when he kept shouting, we threw him out, threatening with a ticket. I spin around in my chair to look at the cork board again, but feel hopeless. Missing men keep being added to it, but no more clues have been discovered. I feel like a complete idiot. Ryder Robertson's picture have now been added to the right side of the board, alongside Henry's, Lewis's, Christian's, and Jake's. All of these men, various ages, occupations, and lives, have been missing, and it was my job to find them. I hear someone walking up to my desk, and I turn to see my partner Jesse. I could put an egg on your head and would be able to fry it within a minute, he says and smiles at his joke, but I don't smile back. I am too tense. Hey, I know it is hard, but with a new victim, there is a possibility for potential clues. I nod without saying anything and turn back to the board. Maybe walk me through what connects these men. Sometimes speaking things out loud helps to see things that could have been missed. I sigh but agree, for the sake of not having any other ideas. Henry, aged 54, went missing in April 2023. In February 2023, he was found not guilty for domestic violence on his wife. Lewis, aged 22, missing in July 2023. There was an old report to the police about attacking his ex-girlfriend, but she came back to retract the report, saying they just argued and she was okay. Chris went missing only a week after Lewis. They are the same age. I don't, however, have anything that links him to the rest of the guys, so maybe he is not part of it. Jake, aged 32, went missing in December 2023. Only 3 months after his lawyer argued that 5 women that came forward from his company about inappropriate behavior towards them were unstable emotionally and had a vendetta against him. So the case was dismissed. And now, we have Ryder, who a year ago assaulted a girl, but somehow the DNA samples the doctors collected disappeared right before the trial. All of them have been seen with a woman at a bar the night before they went missing. So, the only thing that connects these men are vile actions against women. What if the women did it? I laugh and roll my eyes. Yes, because the experienced detective didn't think of that. I will check with the girl from Ryder's case, but all others have rock-stone alibis. I pinch the bridge of my nose with my fingers and rub it, trying to get rid of the headache. Soon enough, this case will be assigned to someone else, since I can't seem to get any leads. And this would be an absolute nightmare for a young, ambitious detective like me. I needed to get at least something to keep me going. I think you need a drink, Jesse says, and I look at him from under my eyebrows. When we're done tonight, we are going out. And, he says quickly, raising his finger to stop me from interrupting. I will not take no for an answer. So here I am now, at the bar, sipping my beer and listening to Jesse vent about the argument with his girlfriend. I politely nod, but only listen to every third word, because the focus is escaping me too quickly. I love him like a brother, but help me God with how much he talks. I look around the bar, trying to look casual, but the moment my eyes land on her, there is nothing casual about me. She walks in with her long strawberry blonde hair, gorgeous black dress, and boots heeled so high, I am surprised she isn't falling every second step. But she has this confident aura about her. She has her head held high like she owns this bar, and I am mesmerized. Jesse notices that because he stops talking and nudges me with his elbow. Go, speak to her, he says with a smirk. Undust your flirting techniques, wipe the cobwebs, and go. And so I do. I get up, still holding my drink, and sit down next to her at the bar. Do you mind if I sit next to you? I ask, and she turns, looking at me with big brown eyes. She smiles. Of course not. She answers softly. My name is Polly. Alex, I say, and shake her hand. Let me buy you a drink, Polly, if that's okay. The Thumping. The museum's intercom crackled on with train station static. Hello, Norville Museum. I ducked at the sound, trying to escape it, cracking my eardrums. He spoke fast, like a sports announcer, at the most critical part of the game. Welcome to your nightly broadcast from your favorite night guard. As always, we must get the boring things out of the way before we have some fun. His voice trailed up and down with the meter of a radio host. It was well practiced. If there is any other human in this fine establishment other than your Steve and Linda, remember, you are stuffed. If there is anyone else here, you will be arrested, and you could be charged with robbery as you are on the premises 30 minutes after closing. He sounded way too excited for his long night shift. So, if there are any other living souls in this building, we get to start my favorite game. Hide and go, speak. I'll count to 30, and then the game starts. Have fun. I could hear the big generators for each light system shutting off, their cranks getting closer each time until the painting in front of me darkened. As my eyes adjusted to the dim light of the exit sign, his words started to set in my head. You will be arrested. I couldn't be arrested, not again, and especially not with robbery charges. Over the still air, a whistle was carried from deep within the museum. It tickled my ears with its swinging tune. With the lightest footsteps I could make, I reached the exit sign. Touching the cold metal made my hair stand on end as I gently pressed on the long bar until a loud click crashed through the room like a cymbal. The whistling stopped, and the silence became much louder. I looked around frantically, removing some of my precious light as my hair whipped around my face. If I was caught, I would have to look into my mother's eyes as she said, "I wouldn't be surprised if she did this, Judge." I couldn't hear that again. My eyes caught a big pot in the middle of the room. It was decorated with strips and little dancing people moving across the two-dimensional plane. As carefully as possible, I opened the lid and slipped my first leg into it. My footsteps sounded like a gong as I put my second in and slipped my body past the hole into the pot. Once the lid was over my head, I was in total darkness. Not even putting my hand in front of my face would give my eyes information. My breathing sounded like it was through a megaphone as it rose up and down, breathing in the clay, which was probably hundreds of years old. I tried to close my eyes, even though it changed nothing, and think about something other than where I was. The more I thought, the more my breathing sounded like it was coming from a tornado. My wind created gale force winds faster as I felt water drip onto my folded knees. My mind raced almost as fast. A thumping started to grow louder. At first, I thought it was from outside that he had found me. It kept getting faster, like he was running in place right outside my pot, teasing me with the promise of captivity, playing with me, just like his stupid voice played up and down like a carousel. I put a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. Thump, 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 thump. Over and over, like an incessant heartbeat, his feet went up and down and up and down. For minutes, his feet went on, just right outside my pot. The drips on my knees were getting bigger and more frequent, adding another sound to my existence. At any moment, he could just open the lid and get this all over with, but he was choosing to mess with me. Thump drip, thump drip. Over and over, faster and faster. I couldn't control my breath, and what did it matter if he was going to torment me? He knew I was there. All he had to do was open the lid and let the red light in. Let it flood in and wash over my face like a river, rinse away the guilt for just a brief moment. Instead, he chose to mess with me. He chose to step and step just outside my reach. I could barely control myself. I started to rock back and forth, and with me, the pot. Thump, drip, clang. Thump, drip, clang. I couldn't do it again. I didn't want to do it again. But when if he opened that lid, I would have to. He deserved it for stepping over and over. Is never ending. Thump, thump, thump. My legs started to tingle with anticipation. I could feel the adrenaline pumping through my veins. My breath got faster as I stared at where I guessed the lid was. My pot rocked back and forth with me, getting ready for his fly-like hands to lift the lid. That's all he was, just a disgusting fly, but all he did was thump, thump, thump. I felt even more adrenaline burst through me as the rocking got faster, my breath got faster, and his shoes got faster. I have to. He'll get me if I don't. I have to. Rung through my head as the thump, thump, drip, thump, thump, clang rang on. A new sound sounded as a voice called out from the other side of the pot's walls. Hey! Another shot of adrenaline cracked open like lightning, and I could feel my legs practically vibrating from the sound. The thumping from his shoes meeting the hardwood floor, my breath at record-breaking speeds, the rocking only being contained by my leans, and drip dripping that reminded my legs to be ready. I want to do it again. I leaped out of the pot before his hand touched it. My head was buzzing with sounds, screams, thumps, tears, and then more screaming. Sounds of teeth on flesh and nails on muscle rang out throughout the silent museum like the most beautiful symphony. Thumps of bodies slamming on the ground, drips of ruby blood, and winds cut from hands swatting me away. I had done it again, and yet it did not go. Thump, thump, thump. Subconcious convictions. They say in the moment of tragedy, time slows down. During those precious seconds, the mind accelerates. Your surroundings blur and disappear as your attention turns inward. You consider the events that led you to this point and what you could, or should, have done different. You consider who this will affect. You're suddenly acutely aware of every regret you have, things you wish you had done, or words you wish you had said to people you may never see again. What they don't tell you is that during this time of reflection, those thoughts don't matter. The steps that led you to this point have already been taken. You cannot change the past, and now must deal with whatever comes as a consequence of your own actions. But what if those thoughts did matter? I'm going to lose my job. That was the first thought that raced through my mind as I watched the man pull a gun from beneath his baggy jacket. The same man I had passed through security only minutes before. This was my first day on the job, and I was already going to lose it. The years I spent in college, scrounging for food and borrowing my friends' couches and car seats just to have a place to sleep. The loans I took from friends, family, and disreputable sources. None of that mattered anymore, as the fruit of my hard-earned labor was going to sour and rot on the very first day. The moment the glint of his pistol caught my attention, my hand was already reflexively reaching for my own holster. In the mere moment it took to draw my gun and form the words on my tongue for the man to drop his weapon, I was presented with a choice. Do I fire at the man, whose own gun is pointed at the young woman behind the desk? Or do I wait and try to talk him down? If I hesitate, he could kill the woman before I fire. Or I could fire first, not giving him the chance to stand down. What if the gun was fake, and this was just an attempt at intimidation? Does this scenario meet the requirements for the rules of engagement? With my decision made, I shout for the man to put down the gun. Before the last word had fled from my mouth, an explosive sound that will, from that moment on, forever haunt my waking moments rings out. I made the wrong judgment. The man pulled the trigger. Time continues to crawl by as the young woman's body drops to the ground, red misting the air and painting the wall behind her. as she crumples out of sight behind the desk. Seemingly to compensate for its slowed pace, time then speeds up. People scream and drop to the ground. A mother flings herself over her child. An elderly man clutches his chest and faints. I have little recollection of what follows. I'm sure police arrive and subdue the man, as I suddenly find myself sitting outside on the curb. Uniformed officers question me. I'm not sure what answers I give them. All I can do is stare at their holstered guns. 3 seconds. That was all the time it took for the man to pull his weapon and end a life. Those 3 seconds play on repeat over and over. I lose my job due to my own negligence. If I had followed proper procedure, I would have found the man's gun as he came through security. Out a job and with a permanent black mark on my record, my degree and certifications become nothing more than useless pieces of paper. My brand new car I financed is repossessed. I return to couch surfing and lending in order to get through each day. Loud sounds now terrify me. The bang of a car door closing has me reflexively reaching for a sidearm that isn't there, only for nausea to rise at the mere thought of a weapon. Red mist and a body crumbling to the ground. It only took 3 seconds for that man to pull his pistol and kill. I can no longer make decisions for myself. I fear that whatever choice I make will be the wrong one, somehow causing another life to end. Second-guessing every move I make completely overwhelms my day-to-day actions. I cannot help but spiral within my own tortured thoughts to the point where I am too terrified to even move. It only took 3 seconds. The instant the man pulled the gun from his jacket, instinct led me to grab my son, push him to the tile floor, and cover his small body with my own. The only thought racing through my mind was his protection. Having only recently lost his father, I couldn't fathom losing Evan as well. A spray of red, the body of a young woman falling to the floor, the thud of her body colliding with tile echoing in my head. What if that had been Evan? What if he were older and the one working behind the desk when someone decided that they would end his life? Who would have protected him if I wasn't here? The security guard by the door, frozen with his gun raised, solidifies my resolve that no one can protect Evan like I can. It takes 3 police officers to pry me from my son's protection. Only after several reassurances that the gunman has been subdued and that we are safe am I willing to detach myself from Evan. Sweeping my sobbing 4-year-old into my arms, I hold him close as I provide the police with my statement, receive the okay from medical personnel to leave, and speed the safety of our small home. That could have been Evan standing behind the counter. No one can protect him like I can. With school shootings a very real possibility, I pull Evan out of school just in case. I find a new job that will allow me to work from home while homeschooling at the same time. Groceries are delivered to the house. Contact-free, of course. The only times I find myself not being able to avoid leaving the safety of our home are for regular visits to the doctor's office. I put these off for as long as I can without risking Evan's health. Every individual we pass is a threat, as who knows what weapons they carry, hidden beneath their clothing. Who knows what intentions they may have, or when they might decide to take their frustrations out on my innocent child. A local news broadcast covers the story of an injured criminal waking during surgery and attacking the caretakers and 2 bystanders. What if Evan and I had been there for an appointment? Even the hospitals weren't safe anymore. I called and canceled Evan's upcoming checkup. The doctor's office called at least once a day for a week straight to reschedule Evan's appointment. I let every call ring to voicemail. I know what is best for Evan. No one can protect him like I can. The phone calls eventually stop. The following week, 2 police officers arrive at our house, claiming the hospital staff called asking for them to ensure we were okay. I reiterate through the closed door that all is well, but I refuse to open my home to them. I can see from the window the weapons they carry. What if they are not really police officers? What if they are here to hurt Evan? The next day, the police return with a woman dressed in a pantsuit and claiming to be from Child Protective Services. I refuse them entry and tell Evan to hide in his room. The woman claims that she is worried for my son's well-being and begs me to open the door. She doesn't have to worry about Evan. That is my job. Only I can protect him. They took Evan from me. They came in force, showing me documents that mean nothing to me as I sit handcuffed on my own couch. They claim I am not mentally fit to take care of my own son, as if they know anything about me or the dangers the outside world presents to my innocent child. I try to get them to understand that he needs me, that only I can protect him. Why can't they understand? They tell me I can argue my case in court. Why does no one understand? How can no one see how dangerous the world is? It only takes one man with a gun deciding to end a life. No one can protect Evan like I can. The customer service smile I have plastered on my face falls away as the man across the desk from me reaches beneath his jacket and pulls free a pistol. Despite the situation, I find myself surprised by the condition of the gun. My father was an avid weapon collector, and, as his only child, I was subjected to hours of instruction on all topics involving firearms. The man's gun isn't anything special, and is a brand that most households have stashed away somewhere for home defense. What caught my attention was the poor condition of the weapon. Scuffs and scratches cover most of the surface, and bare metal glints through gouged paint and texture. Wherever this man had obtained the gun from, there was a good chance it was either stolen or sold illegally. By the time the last remnants of my smile disappear, and my quick analysis of the man's pistol ends, I realize too late that I am the target of his aggression. Raised by a gun enthusiast, I thought I had seen them from every angle. I realized then that never have I stared down the barrel of one. It was a sight immediately burned into my mind, and one I never wanted to see again. I watch in slow motion as the muscles just under the skin of the man's hands tense and his finger begin to pull the trigger. I can't help but think with irony that I won't have to worry about living with that fear. Silence follows the explosion of a firing pistol. The scene before me is familiar, though I can't determine why or how. I stand before a young woman, a waist-high desk the only barrier between us. My right hand grips the cold, unfamiliar metal of the pistol I purchased from a stranger earlier this morning. I stare down the top of the gun at the young woman. She seems more interested in the details of the gun rather than the fact that it is aimed directly at her. There is something familiar about this woman, though I am sure I have never met her before. An irritating itch nags in the back of my mind that something here isn't right. I have been here before, but where am I? I want to turn and take in my surroundings, but am unable to move anything other than my eyes. Time seems to have slowed to a near pause. Glancing at the surface of the desk, I notice a stack of credit card flyers. Oh, that's right. I'm at a bank. One of the few left that actually handle cash instead of digital currency. Why am I at the bank? The memories come slowly, as though I am recollecting them through a vat of honey. The images are hazy at first, but slowly become clearer. I am desperate. The company I worked at collapsed due to fraud. As an accounting associate, I was one of the prime suspects in the case. It has been 2 years since I was accused as an accomplice, and the investigation is still ongoing. In those 2 years, my entire life fell apart. My fiancée left me, taking the word of the media over the man she planned to marry. She took our unborn child with her, refusing to allow me any part in the child's life. Do the investigation, I couldn't find a job. I lost my fiancé, child, and career. I lost all reason to continue to try. All I have left is a roof over my head, and even that will be gone soon unless I do something. Robbing the bank wasn't a thought-out plan, but rather a decision made in desperation. Why had I thought this would be a good idea? I've never done anything like this before. This isn't me. Who have I become? The eyes of the woman before me begin to widen as she realizes she is staring down the barrel of my gun. Realization, surprise, fear, and then acceptance cross her features within a heartbeat. My hand tenses, my index finger beginning to pull the trigger. Wait. I've been here before. I've done this before. I've killed this woman already. Why am I doing this? For money? Is this really how far I have fallen? Would I really consider killing a woman for whatever change she might have in the drawer? Wait, no. I have already considered this. In fact, I have already done it. I am staring down the sights of my gun into the eyes of a dead woman. That is why she is familiar to me. I know I've killed her, but I don't remember what happened afterwards. Was I arrested? Was I shot? Glancing to my right, I notice a woman in the process of throwing herself over a young boy. Her son, Evan. Evan? Why do I know the boy's name? That isn't all I know. I know that the mother will be so scarred from my actions that she will hide her child away from the world, paranoid and plagued by the idea of some stranger hurting the only family she had left. Evan will spend the rest of his childhood in the foster care system. I've never met them before. So why do I know this? I shift my attention to my left, where a young security guard points his own firearm in my direction, his mouth open in a silent shout. I can see the fear and indecision wrought into his features. He will lose his job and any chance of a healthy life due to my actions today. Finally, I look back to the woman before me. She loses her life because of me. These are my victims. I can see the consequences these innocent bystanders will spend the remainder of their lives trying to cope with. All because I was desperate to pay my rent. I don't want this. I don't want to kill this young woman who has done nothing to wrong me. I don't want to cause the security guard to spend the rest of his life terrified of strangers and loud noises. I don't want Evan to grow up without his mother. My hand relaxes, and the gun soundlessly clatters to the ground before everything fades to black. Looking up from the report, scrolling across his tablet, Jared smiled at his supervisor, Dr. Daniels, who had just entered the lab. "Good afternoon, Doctor." The subject passed on the first run. His remorse caused a shift in his subconscious, and he dropped the gun before killing the woman this time. Dr. Daniels nodded, a bit of the ever-present tension in his shoulders relaxing. "That is good. Pull him out of the simulator and send the report to the recovery team. With luck, he'll be eligible for reintegration within the next year or so." After receiving the affirmative from his associate, Dr. Daniels headed for the door, sparing one last glance at the man lying on the bed connected to the simulator unit. The device was revolutionary to solving overcrowding within the municipal system. Based on their progress with therapists and reports provided by behavioral specialists, qualified convicts are removed from their cells and transferred to one of a few facilities housing advanced neurological simulators. Rather than spend years within a cell comprised of bars and mortar, they are instead imprisoned within the walls of their own subconscious. They are then subjected to relive the events of the crime they committed, as well as experience firsthand the impact their misconduct left on their victims. The results were astounding, proving that remorse and guilt, if stressed on a deeply subconscious level, could change the morality of an individual. Rather than spend the remainder of their lives behind bars, these ex-convicts would receive a second chance. Depending on their results after undergoing intense therapy, they would be allowed to reintegrate into a controlled section of society, a sector that was developed specifically for these individuals. They would not be allowed to return to the public, as retribution is still demanded for their actions. They would, however, be provided the opportunity to work in their chosen profession, earn a wage, and make something better of themselves while serving out the remainder of their sentence. Tearing his gaze from the man lying in the hospital bed, Dr. Daniels stepped out of the room and headed for the next lab. Killer ratings. The stealth drone hovered over the backyard of the suburban house, its camera zooming in close to its subject. A boy, kneeling on the lawn, in one hand a praying mantis, the other a pair of tweezers. Holding the insect close to his expressionless face, he slowly ripped the legs off the mantis. Then once that task was completed, immersed the body in a jar of water that lay on the grass in front of him until the insect stopped struggling and was still. A thin smile played across the boy's face. "Hey, Dave," Richie called out across the bustling studio of Hitchcock Media Enterprises. "Come take a look at this. Think we have a future winner here." Dave looked up from his editing station and walked over to the Richie's terminal, where the balding heavyset man was reviewing the drone footage. "Check this." Richie clicked the play button. "I reckon we got ourselves a classic Type C." Dave watched the replay and nodded. "Yep, definitely Type C. He will be moving on to small animals next, I bet." Dave grabbed a chair and sat down. "What backstory have you got on him so far?" Richie pulled up a file onto the terminal screen. "Let's see. We got a 14-year-old kid, only child, with single-parent mother. Never knew his father." He scrolled down. "Mother is a Christian fundamentalist. Breastfed the kid until he was 2 years old." Narrowed his eyes. "Oh, and get this. She would hop into the bath with him every night and sponge him clean up until he was 10 when he started getting erections." Dave barked a short laugh. "Jesus, where do these people come from?" He leant back in the chair. In the future, people would look back on this time as the era of surveillance, where nothing could be hidden unless you were the rich elite. Still, it made their job a hell of a lot easier, which was to make a shitload of money off human misery. Dave liked to think they were performing a necessary evil, like a safety valve on the pressure cooker that was modern society. That made what he did a little easier, and although he still might not sleep well at night, he did sleep in a large mansion in a secure community next to a cosmetically perfect wife. Richie was talking again. Dave focused his attention on the screen. "I've run the algorithms, and the AI is coming up with a 93% chance of activation by the age of 25. "Those are good odds," said Dave, rubbing his chin. "Put a flag on his file, and we'll check back in a few years." Dave stood up and clapped the other man on the shoulder. "The fans are gonna love this one. Richie, good job as always." Richie grinned. "Thanks, Chief." Dave returned to his desk, where he was currently editing the latest true crime documentary, to be released later that month. This one was a typical Type B case, a nurse who had been stealthily killing cancer patients by injecting air into their IV drips. A pretty mundane, angel of death scenario, but HME had gotten onto her pretty quick, so the broadcasting and publishing rights hadn't cost an arm and a leg. Dave didn't think ratings would be that great, but they had managed to get some decent footage from the hospital and the journal the nurse had written, so it would be worth syndicating to make a bit more profit. HME's documentaries were some of the highest rating reality shows on Downstream, and let's face it, that's all that existed on mass social media these days. But things had been a little lean of late, and they needed a big, high-profile case. Dave considered Richie's latest find. Type C cases were always male, of low to average intelligence, with suppressed trauma from childhood caused by a family member, and would exhibit acts of violence around the onset of adolescence. The victims were usually female and involved sexual violence or torture before death. We need another Ted Bundy or Richard Ramirez, Dave thought. They don't make them like they used to. Dave chuckled. Imagine if we could have got those guys to sign. We would be drowning in royalties. Still shaking his head in amusement, he wandered over to the publicity department. A tall, angular-looking woman, poring over some glossy printouts at her desk, looked up at his approach. "Hey, Dave. How can I help you?" "Hey, Jenny. Just wondering if Anthony is around." Jenny pursed her lips. "He was on sick leave, I think." She checked the screen in front of her. He was supposed to be back a few days ago, but I haven't seen him. Maybe he needed some more time off." Okay. I guess it's hard to find good help these days, eh?" Jenny laughed politely. Dave leaned against the desk. "Look, maybe you can help me. I'm trying to come up with a catchphrase for the latest doco, but I'm stumped." Jenny furrowed her brow in concentration. "That's the nurse one, right?" Dave nodded. And she was an elderly type as well." Her eyes lit up, and she clicked her fingers. "How about the matron of mercy?" Dave contemplated the idea. "You know, that's great." He gave Jenny a thumbs up. "It'll play well, considering all the victims were terminal patients anyway. Make for some nice, wholesome family viewing." Jenny gave an absent-minded smile as she returned to her work. Dave was just finishing off the credits for the nurse documentary when one of the interns came rushing over, flustered and red-faced. "Sir, I think we have something big," the young man said breathlessly. "Maybe even a possible Type A." Dave pointed. "Juan, isn't it?" He prided himself on knowing all the names of his staff, even down to the gophers. "Look, calm down. Take a seat and tell me what you've got." The intern sat down and held out a tablet. "We just received some info from one of our talent scouts out in San Francisco. Female, body count of 2, high likelihood of Type A." Dave glanced at the picture. Pretty blonde, with freckles and all, a real girl-next-door beauty. He felt a thrill of exhilaration run through him. A Type A was the rarest of the rare, a serial murderer who was charismatic, highly intelligent, and usually politically or ideologically motivated. They were also the most difficult ones to get to sign on the dotted line. "Okay, I'm gonna need more details here." Juan read from the screen in his hand. Gordon Calloway, the third CEO of the hedge fund Armada Laudid, was found strangled to death in his penthouse suite at the Regency in LA 6 days ago. Our surveillance picked up this woman leaving the room soon after the time of death. Then she just seemed to disappear. The young man licked his lips. Then 2 days ago, a male body was found in a 4th-floor room of the Fairmont in San Francisco. His skin had been totally removed by a surgical device, most likely a scalpel. As a result, the deceased is yet to be identified. He paused and looked at Dave. The same woman was again detected by our surveillance leaving the scene. Dave raised his eyebrows. 2 different methods of killing. Now that was unusual, even for a Type A. This was getting better and better. Now, you are going to love this. The intern smiled. We have ID on the suspect. Her name is Samantha Bronte, 21 years old and currently studying a master's degree in criminology and comp science at New York University. Dave opened his mouth to speak, but Juan held up his hand. And this is the clincher. Her parents were the last victims of one Simon Peters. Dave felt his jaw drop. Simon Peters, aka the Cuckold Strangler? His doco from 4 years ago was one of the highest rating of all time. Jesus Christ, this is insane. Hey, Richie, he yelled out. Get over here pronto. What is it? Richie asked, eyes gleaming. He could tell when something good was going on. Simon Peters, give us a recap. Okay. So his MO was prowling the motor inns of West Florida, where he would stalk and choose his victims, always middle-class couples. Richie scratched his cheek thoughtfully. He would break into their room early in the morning, tie the couple up at gunpoint, rape and strangle the woman in front of her partner, then slit the guy's throat with a hunting knife. He did us a big favor as well by recording the last 2 murders with his phone. Richie looked down at his hands. Of course, we couldn't use such explicit footage for our feature, but somehow, he winked at Dave. Somehow the footage made its way to the dark web, and the notoriety of that boosted our ratings tenfold. Dave let out a breath. There must be some connection here, but that's not important right now. We need to track this Samantha down, and fast. Dave and Richie exchanged knowing looks. This is big, Dave said. Possibly the biggest thing we've ever seen. A notification pinged on Juan's tablet, and he gasped out loud. What is it? Dave queried sharply. The intern looked up. We have just detected the suspect arriving at North Vegas Airport, and from her credit card records, she has booked a room at the MGM Grande for tonight. Dave felt the hairs on his arms stand up. All right, I'm going to take care of this one personally. We can't afford to lose this. Gonna pack an overnight bag and take our private Gulfstream to Vegas ASAP. Should be there in under 2 hours. He pointed at Richie. Organize a car for me and alert everyone that it's all hands on deck. Richie nodded briskly. Will do. And good luck, Dave. Dave arrived at the MGM in the early evening, the desert sunset casting an eerie blood like haze across the dusty parking lot. The hotel lobby was relatively quiet. A few tourist groups checking in, and a scattering of people at the bar. He looked down at the picture on his phone and scanned the area. Nope, not here. Dave fought down a wave of frustration. Okay, gotta stay calm. He glanced at the bar. I'll grab a drink and wait. He ordered a beer, and the gorgeous raven-haired woman next to him gave him a tentative smile. He nodded briskly. Any other time I'd be interested, but it's all business right now, sweetie. He took his drink and sat down at a table, which commanded a view of the lobby entrance and the elevators leading to the suites. This was the crucial moment, the first contact. He found most of the time the killer was flattered, both by the money offered and the chance at infamous immortality. Their name remembered long after the victims had been forgotten. Most of the time. His phone started ringing. Hello? It was Richie. Dave, we got a problem. We've checked the hotel camera and there is no sign of our target, coming or going. Looks like we got scammed. Dave sighed bitterly. Damn it, well, she must be in Vegas somewhere. He looked out the entrance. It was dark now, with the first stars appearing in the velvet night. Look, I'm gonna stay here for a while. Keep your eyes and ears open, and let me know if anything develops. "Roger that," Richie replied. Dave sighed again. Might as well get another beer. The dark-haired lady was still at the bar, a few whiskeys in by the looks of the glasses in front of her. She looked at him from under lowered eyelids. "I was watching you. Looks like you've been stood up." Dave flashed a wry grin. "Yeah, you could say that." A faint smile. "Me too. I don't think my date is turning up." She gave him a sultry glance. "Look, I have a room here and a bottle of sparkling on ice waiting for me. Want to come up and have a nightcap?" Dave chuckled. "Still got it." "Sure, why not? Maybe we can salvage something out of this shitty situation." Her room was on the 12th floor with an impressive view of the Strip. As she was closing the door behind them, Dave asked, "Hey, I didn't catch your name?" "Oh, how rude of me. It's Samantha," she replied breathily, just as he felt a sharp pinprick, and then everything went black. He awoke groggily, unable to move. After a quick assessment, he realized that was because his hands and feet were restrained with zip ties, and he was lying on a bed with duct tape holding him down. "Awake now, my little Dave?" The woman was standing beside the bed, gently caressing his arm. He shivered with a frisson of fear. "You're Samantha Bronte?" he demanded with wide eyes. "And how do you know my name?" Samantha smiled sardonically. "Oh, I know everything about you." She sat down on the edge of the bed. "You fell into my trap like such a good little boy." "But how?" Dave stammered. "You'd be surprised at what you can do with a degree in computer science." She continued stroking him with her fingernails. "Especially when you have HME's login details from a loyal employee." She took something from the bedside table and plopped it onto his chest with a sickening squelch. "I don't think your buddy Anthony is going to be coming back to work anytime soon." He gazed at the reddish-colored object with growing horror. Holy shit, it was his skin. It was Anthony's skin. Samantha dug her nails into his arm viciously. Dave cried out in pain. "Do you know what it's like to lose your parents in the most hideous way, and then to have their violation watched again and again by your millions of depraved fans?" Dave gasped. "Look, honey, we don't make these killers. We just make them famous. If not us, then someone else would." "I'm not so sure." Samantha's voice dripped pure venom. "But you're going to find out, all of you, what a really dedicated serial killer can do." She took something from under the bed. "You and your puerile nicknames. It's only poetic justice to return the favor." "Do you recall one of your first documentaries?" Samantha stood up. "I believe it was called The Boston Bludgeoner." The rusty sledgehammer was the last thing Dave saw. Marie Antoinette. Squat, beige and Soviet. The Marie Antoinette apartments stood against the stale gray Minneapolis sky. Irony of the worst kind, he thought, blandly ugly and unconscious. He would take exquisitely self-aware irony any day over this 3-story architectural monstrosity, classed up with tacked-on Ionic Greek columns, harsh blue LED Christmas lights wrapped inexpertly around them, canned Christmas classics pumping through the air. God, this place was only better than minimum security prison by a hair. But it was all he could afford now, so he'd just have to lower his eyes, and his standards, every time he approached. He tried to avoid the other people in the building, but a few of the near indigent souls, especially the family across the hall, insisted on pestering him with their lowbrow holiday cheer, the cheap gift of homemade cookies, the invitation of a seat at their dinner table on Christmas night on the flip side of a child's crude drawing of a Christmas tree slipped under his door. All this might have been more bearable If anyone he knew now understood why the Marie Antoinette apartments pained his soul, filled him with righteous rage, he'd certainly never get that from his obtuse, court-appointed therapist, a small, garish woman whose office and clothing reeked of TJ Maxx. So, he amused himself by using up their 50 minutes, complaining about how much he hated living there. His fingers itched to blow the place up, her told her, to set it alight. She told him there were healthier ways to channel and examine his negative emotions, so he could eventually let them go. He needed to think about what the Marie Antoinette represented to him, she told him, to look deeper, and to perhaps think about its positive attributes instead. This made him laugh hysterically. How much deeper can I go than living inside the damned building? Should I dive into the meaning of my laminate, faux wood floors and formica kitchen counters, the rancid smell of old cooking that oozes from the graying, cracked walls studded with nail holes and abandoned archaeological remnants of tape from all the miserable souls who inhabited the purgatory before me? How about the rust-stained, leaking toilet and body oil-marked tub? Should I look for Rorschachs in its grimy patterns? That's not what I meant, she said quietly. And you know it. Well, I cherish my negative emotions, he said, suddenly tired. They're the only things keeping me going these days. Till near morning, a couple of weeks before Christmas, after one too many sleeping pills, he had a vivid dream. It started out of focus as he dragged himself toward the Marie Antoinette, bearing his usual cloak of heavy gray resignation, and pushed hard against the main door, as he always had to. Only this time, the door sprang open, and instead of jarring, cold Christmas music, warm strains of exquisite chamber music vibrated through him. All came into focus. The entryway had grown to twice its size, the gray, nondescript industrial carpet replaced with a glowing mahogany parquet floor. Instead of aluminum mailboxes and a frameless wall mirror on either side of the narrow space, giant gilt mirrors reflecting golden candlelight and gold and cream fleur-de-lis silk wallpaper covered the walls. The walls heaved outward until the room became what it wanted to be, a grand palace ballroom, complete with gently tinkling, candle-lit chandeliers. A ballroom for him alone. The effect was ostentatious, but stunning, the way his ex-wife had decorated their homes in the city, on the island, at the lake, near the slopes, their homes for every preposition, all gone now. He dream-prayed he had died and gone to heaven, but he awoke to the same ordinary life, the drab apartment, a shift at the same greasy job, and another boring session after it with his therapist, the only person he ever said more to than, "Can I take your order, would you like fries with that?" A woman he would have sneered at, if not ignored, in his old life, and would again someday when his luck turned. Would he tell her about his dream? He decided he would. It seemed safe enough, wasn't about the past, the present, or even the future. It was just a dream. But was it? As his workday dragged on, the customers who filed into the restaurant looked at him, smiling with something more, it seemed to him, than mere pre-Christmas cheer. He began to wonder if the dream wasn't a message. Maybe his luck was about to turn. He'd paid his dues after all. That old feeling began to tingle again. By the time his 4 o'clock appointment with TJ, as he'd taken to calling her, even to her face, arrived, he'd decided he must keep the dream to himself until he knew more. He had to get through the session, get home, eat a little something, and take his sleeping pills. "You seem distracted today," TJ said late in the hour. "Something happened this week?" Same old, same crappy job," Same crappy apartment. He shifted his gaze to the pressed board, "Believe" plaque near the window before she could read him, but she was astute, this small, tacky woman. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw her cock her head. "You're not complaining like you usually do. Did something change?" Like I said, nope. Maybe I've adjusted to living in a shithole, I don't know. He attempted to give her an aw shucks grin, but felt his face contorting in weird ways, so he scrambled to throw her a bone. "Have I told you about my neighbors across the way?" He leaned back and sneered, coming up with an awful lie. "I'd swear to God she's killing him sometimes, and man, I wish she'd succeed so I can get some rest." "What do you think it means, Doc? That I don't care if he dies?" TJ sighed and drummed her red fingernails on her thigh. "It's Clauso 450, she said. "Let's just pick this up next week." Tilda. The dream started the same as before. Heavy, quotidian dread as he approached the stunted building, growing excitement and wonder as it opened to a Versailles-like hall of mirrors. But this time, the hall was filled with people. Giant people. People twice his height, in silken 18th century finery, swirling and spinning around the room, wind-up dolls in white wigs with faces he recognized. His old clients, wealthy people he'd cheated and stolen from for years, people he'd fooled into being his friends, people from the life he wanted back desperately. He tried to speak, to get their attention, but nothing came, not even air. As he watched, the dancers grew larger. Wait, no, he grew smaller. He was shrinking, becoming more and more insignificant. An insect, a speck, dirt. He would always be dirt. Tilda. He stumbled through the rest of the week, his nights vast and dreamless. TJ seemed surprised to see him in the waiting room early but said nothing. He sat on her couch, cleared his throat. "I had this dream," he said, "that my building became a palace, but one I will never have access to again." His voice shook. She handed him the tissue box. Yes. He gave her a brief description of the dream. "What do you think it means?" she asked. "Isn't that your job?" "No," she said simply, and crossed her arms, waiting. "I guess. I don't think I'll ever again have the life I had before." "I don't think," he said, swallowed. "I deserve it." "No," she said again, not clarifying what she meant, which oddly made him feel more respect for her. "So, what now?" "That's up to you." "Well, a hint might be nice," he whispered, wanting to scream. He swallowed. "You are my damn therapist after all." "Okay. What do you miss most about your old life?" "Not from in here." She tapped her head. "Not ego. From here." She tapped her chest. "Heart. What do you really miss?" He shook his head. "I don't know. Without those things on the table, nothing. I mean, I don't have kids. My ex-wife was a money-grubbing bitch, and my friends... Shit, I didn't really have those. Maybe luck. But that's not what you mean either. I know what you're getting at, but you're barking up the wrong tree." She smiled, the first full smile he'd seen from her since they'd met, before she'd gotten to know him. "I don't think so. I think you're getting somewhere. Maybe your dream was telling you more than you think. Like I've said before, dig deeper, go further. The answers are there, inside that building and inside you." He choked back a snarky, "Whatever, Obi-Wan," and nodded at her. Glancing at the clock above the door, he stood, smoothing his sweaty palms against his jeans. "Hold on." She held up a finger and smiled again. "I have something for you." He stared, not comprehending. She turned to fish something out of a paper bag, then turned back, holding out a flat package wrapped in green tissue paper and red curly ribbon. Of course, Christmas was only 4 days away. He stammered, cheeks reddening. "I didn't get you anything." He didn't know why he was embarrassed, which only made him blush harder. She laughed. "I was not expecting you to. Don't worry about it, it's no big deal." "Merry Christmas." "Merry, yeah," he said, looking down at his name. Jeb, in black marker on the paper, an inexpertly drawn holly leaf and berries below it. A feeling spread, not altogether unpleasant, replacing ungenerous thoughts about the cheesy gift she'd likely procured at TJ Maxx. "Thank you, Geraldine," he mumbled and bumbled out the door. Tilda. He worked Christmas Eve day, took the bus, and trudged home as the sun set again too early, the day again too short, carrying his fast food dinner and a bottle of California Pinot Noir he'd splurged on. It was only 4, but it felt like midnight, and his near-unfurnished apartment felt more featureless and tired and depressing than prison ever had been. Because it was his choice to leave it so, he realized. He had nowhere else to go, so he busied himself with eating and drinking, the food cold and congealed, and the wine's mediocrity disappointing. Folding up the empty, redolent burger paper and fries box, he glanced at the present Geraldine had given him, still unopened on the kitchen counter. He wasn't sure whether he'd saved it because it was his only gift, or because he didn't really care about it. Either way, he might as well open it now. He washed his greasy hands in the kitchen sink and poured another glass of wine. He picked up the gift and carefully untied the red ribbon, did his best not to tear the green paper as he picked at the tape, then slid the paper away. Not a tacky nothing after all, but a green, leather-bound book, like the ones his ex-wife had bought by the shelf-load from antiquaries to decorate their homes, curated for color and size rather than content. But this wasn't inert decoration. It was chosen for him to read. He snorted. Crime and punishment. He knew the gist of the story, though he suspected he'd have to read it to get the nuances she intended. Funny, he found himself looking forward to it. His doorbell rang. Book in hand, still smiling with surprised respect for Geraldine. He answered the door to find the frazzled woman from across the hall. "Hi, Jeb, right?" Her grin was crooked, a little shy, infectious. He nodded, and she said, "Marissa, you never responded to our invite to dinner for tomorrow evening. Can you make it? We'd be glad to have you. We're making turkey with all the fixings. A couple other neighbors are coming." He considered this only a moment, tasting the oily coating of his pitiful dinner as he licked his lips. "You know what? Yes, Marissa. I'd be honored. Can I bring anything? Just yourself." She grinned again. 6 o'clock sharp, if that's okay, because of the Munchkins' early bedtime. "Sure," he said, finding himself grinning in response. 6. Great. She glanced at his book, then inside the doorway at his near-bare apartment. "Looks like a bookshelf is in order, huh? Maybe even a sofa." She laughed. He couldn't help but laugh with her. "Yes," he said. "It's time." Again, that soft, warm lightness pushing out something hard and heavy he hadn't even known was there. What was it? Only later, while lying on his second-hand mattress on the floor, after he'd read the long first part of the leather-bound book about young, impoverished Raskolnikov scheming and rationalizing his decision to murder a pawnbroker for her money, did it come to him. Like Raskolnikov, he'd lost something along the way, something essential and tender that had shriveled to a hard stone inside him once he began to drip Ponzi scheme money. Something poor little rich girl Marie Antoinette likely never knew her entire tragic gold-plated life. That night he dreamt again, a simple dream, The Marie Antoinette apartments remained an ugly pedestrian building, but he entered with lightness, that warmth down to his bones. He greeted neighbors in the lobby by name, delivered groceries to the housebound old lady down the hall, went into his simply but warmly furnished apartment to make himself a nourishing meal. Christmas morning, he leapt out of bed. If he was lucky, he might find gifts for the children across the hall before noon. Not in it for the money. I was a hacker for almost as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I lived to mess around with computers, programming, writing and cracking codes, and surfing to the darkest edges of the internet. What I couldn't learn from manuals, chat rooms, message boards, or friends I pretty much just figured out on my own. So early on I knew that hacking would make me way more money than flipping burgers at Mickey D's, earning a college diploma, or even scoring a high-paying job on Wall Street, and with a lot less of the mess and stress that usually accompanies your average 9-to-5 gig. But it was never about money, and things have changed since then, which was why I'd retired. For obvious reasons, I can't tell you my name. And after you read this, you won't be able to trace it back to my IP address it was sent from, since I've developed and used a multi-level super encryption masking and scrubbing device to send this screed. So, why am I taking the risk of getting back into the game, stepping out of the shadows and into the grid by divulging this secret to the New York Times? Because of the way they've ruined it for all of us. I've had enough and just can't stomach it anymore. Who are they, you ask? In 2 words, today's hackers. These hackers today. They've no respect and are almost always in it only for the money. When I was in the hacking game, it was all about changing the world and making a difference. Sure, every now and then we'd line our own pockets a bit, with enough to cover expenses and then some. But for me, unlike them, it wasn't about the money. Maybe it's just the lone wolf versus mob mentality. Today's hackers are not only creating chaos, but they make no distinction of who it is directed toward. For them, there are no good or bad guys, only easy pickings. And because they do that, it reflects poorly upon our past and present hacker communities as a whole. It's their ransomware attacks that really piss off most of us legit hackers. Nowadays, the bigger their haul, the more likely these greed-fueled Robin Hoodish banditos will invest it in specialization and franchising. They've certainly gotten better at it over the years. Remember the Colonial Pipeline assault? It may have not been the most costly hack attack from 2021 to 2022. Only $4.4 million was made from that hack. But the downtime caused by lost business and revenue was far more financially damaging to them than the ransom size. The WannaCry virus was far bigger in the number of computers it infected, 300,000 plus, and resulted in $6 billion USD of damage, albeit the blackmail payout dollar size wasn't the top dollar in brides for that period. Well, I, for one, want to put a stop to it now. Here's a short list of today's greatest hacker hits. Coming in hot at number 1 for 2021 is the insurance company, Can Financial Corp, for a whopping $40 million, which was a record liberation money amount paid up to that point. The second was meat producer JBS's payment of $11 million US, followed by GPS system manufacturer Garmin for $10 million, an unidentified Austrian organization, $4.7 million, CWT Global Travel Services, $4.5, Brenntag, a chemical distributor, $4.4, Travelex, $2.3, resulting in the corporation's declared bankruptcy, fashion company Fat Face Ltd, $2.0, and then $1.14 million extorted from San Francisco's University of California. Do the math and tally it up. That's a grand total of nearly $85 million US. As 2022 began, so did more digital assaults, beginning with the FlexBooker data breach on January 3rd. The Red Cross charity organization was the next innocent victim. Then came Crypto.com, multiple Credit Suisse banks, universities, hospitals, and even the Costa Rican government. Now, with nearly 36 other major thefts occurring thus far in a year, with still 3 months to go, it's really getting out of hand, isn't it? When today's hackers set their sights on specific ransom amounts, they normally take into account several factors. 1. The size of the infected network. 2. The target's overall net worth, including revenue and clients' accounts held in escrow. 3. The plane of data sensitivity being breached, and that's the way they do it. It not only hurts organizations and businesses out there that put good into the world, but even reputable hackers such as me. Therefore, this really has to stop. And there's only one way to paralyze today's hackers dead in their tracks, to halt them from fermenting further mischief. So, what's a respectable hacker of yesteryear ever to do these days? Basically, the way I'd decided to deal with it is not stooping to their level. That was up until the day when I had this idea. We, the good guy hackers of yesterday, need to band together and go after all the bad guy hackers of today to fight fire with fire. In other words, globally, the good must unite with one another to go after these nefarious computer criminals to hit them where it'll hurt the most. We hack the bad guys. I've been developing a unique virus that'll infect their devices and which would A, identify offenders so the rest of the world could detect them and out these blackmailers, B, temporarily lock down their software until the threat's resolved, and C, permanently disable and damage beyond repair any hardware used by chronic repeat offenders to stop them and wipe out their access to easy cash flow. With every day that's passed, I got closer to my goal, to halt and hurt today's malicious hackers, and now I feel I may have cracked that code to allow me access via a back door in all computers that'll leave those greedy bastards defenseless. I'm almost there, and come tomorrow, my friends, sweet revenge. Like Arnold Schwarzenegger in The Terminator, I'm back. It's murder, sir. A scream. The sharp clatter of a dropped tea service, the sound of soft sobs, a rush of footsteps up the stairs, the sight of a dead body. And then, silence. It's murder, sir, PC Connors spoke. DCI Whitcomb eyed the constable wearily, sighing inwardly. He was tired already, and they had just arrived at the scene of a particularly bloody crime. For future reference, if we ever come across the body of an old lady sitting at her writing desk with a knife through her neck, let's take it as read that it's murder, Connors. DC Whitcomb sat in a chair and surveyed the room. Where is WPC Sanders? I need her eyes up here. Whitcomb muttered the last sentence under his breath. He was a man who appreciated a woman on the police force, for she would often have a point of view that he would never see. She was certainly good at her job. She took excellent photographs, a new thing in police work. She also did a fine job with fingerprints, although Whitcomb had reservations about their usefulness. WPC Sanders struggled through the door, laden with equipment. No one offered to assist her. She had learned not to ask. With brisk movements, she set up the equipment and started taking photographs. Whitcomb didn't need to be there for this, but he stayed anyway. Connors stood by the door, shifting from foot to foot. DC. Whitcomb sighed again, this time audibly. Connors, make yourself useful for once and gather the family downstairs, and make sure that blasted butler is there too. Whitcomb didn't like the fish-eyed butler at all. He looked suspicious. Why he looked suspicious was anyone's guess, but Whitcomb had taken an instant dislike to the man. Whitcomb poked around the old lady's room for a few minutes, taking mental notes and nodding his head a few times. Sanders carried on silently. She knew better than to interject her thoughts, but she also knew that she would be asked about her views on the case in due time. Satisfied, Whitcomb left the room, instructing Sanders to get a wriggle on and then meet him downstairs. Whitcomb tested the hallways and the stairs on his way down. Solid, every square inch. Anyone could creep about up here and not be heard, he mused. The old lady had 2 sons and 1 daughter, all of whom lived with their now deceased mother in the mansion. The 3 progeny were all sitting, and they seemed nervous to Whitcomb. Naturally, he thought. One of them is a killer. I need to interview all of you separately. Once I have finished, I will send you back in here. There is to be no conversing between yourselves until I have finished. PC Connors will be here to make sure that you abide by my directive. I say! One of the men stood up, a small frown on his face, and a rather large whiskey in his hand. The law, Whitcomb said severely, requires this, sir. The man sat down and said nothing more, but his face showed his displeasure. The woman scoffed, either at her brother's reaction or the DCI's statements. One just couldn't be sure. DCI Whitcomb pointed at the man who had stood up, gesturing for him to approach with the crook of his forefinger. You first, sir. The questioning went along normal, well-worn lines. Whitcomb saw no need to alter what had always worked. You found out where everyone was during the crime, you looked for corroboration, and you noted any strange behavior. The stories were distressingly similar. Not to put too fine a point on it, the stories were exact. Everyone was downstairs, eating breakfast, when the maid discovered the body. No one had seen their mother since 10 o'clock the night before. All retired to bed at roughly the same time, a little after midnight. The butler and the head housekeeper, a married couple who had worked for the murdered woman for over 30 years, retired to their rooms a little before midnight. All the door and windows had been shut and locked. DCI Whitcomb leaned back and sighed. He had had to deal with 2 murders in his 30-year career before this one, and they had been straightforward. The guilty parties had been easily nabbed, the evidence had been plentiful, and the convictions had been a foregone conclusion. He thought of the men who had been hanged because of his efforts. He could still see them swinging slightly from their final earthly judgment at the end of a rope. With a slight shudder, he returned to his task. It's a nasty business, sir. PC Connors spoke up. Once again, he was standing in a doorway, shifting from foot to foot nervously. Whitcomb looked at him with some slight irritation. The man had a positive talent for stating the obvious. Why don't you go get yourself a cuppa? See if the staff have anything to say about it all. Take your time, Connors. Maybe have a biscuit or 2, Whitcomb said. The sarcasm in his voice was completely lost on Connors. Connors lost no time in doing so. The detective chief inspector made him nervous at the best of times, but on this case, he seemed positively put out. Besides, he was feeling a bit peckish and could do with a nice cup of tea and a bite to eat. Well, he's good to have around when we need some muscle, WPC Sanders commented graciously. Ha! And that's all he's good for. Still, he's a good lad, Whitcomb said. Whitcomb winced at the thought of Connors becoming a detective chief inspector in the future. The man had no business running an investigation. WPC Sanders would be a far better candidate. But she was a woman, and she would not get the chance to advance beyond her current status. Whitcomb and Sanders went through the bedrooms of the siblings, and that of the butler and his wife as well, but success was limited. It would have been nice to find some bloody clothes tucked away somewhere. But this murderer wasn't as obliging as the other killers he had faced in his career. The evening was fast approaching on this October night. Soon the sun would disappear and the night would be cold. It might even snow, Whitcomb thought. While he didn't relish the thought of being stranded here, he also didn't want to leave and allow a killer to escape. Whitcomb had the butler make up a bedroom for him. The man blinked rapidly behind his glasses and hesitated slightly before nodding and doing as he was told. Suspicious, Whitcomb thought again. Whitcomb sent the other two home, instructing Sanders to develop the photographs and bring them back early in the morning. Connors was to fill the car's tank with petrol and make sure the vehicle was equipped to deal with a tire puncture. Connor may not be a great copper, but he was good with cars. As he settled in for the night, Whitcomb thought of the suspects. They all had motive, and he knew that one of them had to be the murderer. The butler and his wife knew more than they were letting on, but they were guilty of no bigger a crime than loyalty to the family. The kitchen staff and maids were tight-lipped as well, but Whitcomb was sure that they knew nothing of the murder of old Mrs. Ainsley. Even the gardeners and the handymen had precious little to say about it all, probably because they had nothing of import to tell. Whitcomb sighed and turned out the light. Whitcomb was up early the next morning, well before the three Ainsley siblings. He wandered into the kitchen to see about getting a cup of tea. He found Connors there, chatting amiably with the cook and the maids. They all quickly scraped back their chairs and stood up when Whitcomb entered. Whitcomb waved his hand, gesturing for them to all sit down. He gave Connors an appreciative nod of the head. The man was not lazy, he thought. WPC Sanders is in the library, sir. She has those photographs, Connors said. Whitcomb patted him on the shoulder and told him to carry on, by which he meant that Connors should continue to have a chat and a cuppa, staying out of Whitcomb's way. WPC Sanders did not stand when Whitcomb entered the library. She was studying the panoply of photographs that she had laid out across the ventral table in an impressively large library. Whitcomb was slightly stunned at the sheer size of the room and the thousands of books it contained. Rich folk, he mused, lived much differently than he did. "Good morning, Dad," Sanders said as she continued to scan the photographs. "I am DCI Whitcomb when we're working, young lady. I am your loving and generous dad when we are off duty. You would do well to remember that," Whitcomb said with some asperity. He loved his daughter, but he didn't like that she had to see such a gruesome sight yesterday. It made him testy. He didn't like having to tell his wife that their daughter had seen a dead body. It made him testy. He didn't like that his daughter had to go home and tell her husband that she had seen more blood than anyone should have to see. It made him testy. "Sorry, Dad. DCI Whitcomb, sir." Sanders looked up and grinned at her father and her superior at work. She was not above a little needling. "Enough with the pleasantries. What do you see in these pictures?" Sanders stood up and directed Whitcomb to a set of photographs near her. "You can see that the old lady was killed at the desk. No blood trail, just splatters and spray. Except in this one area, very little blood." "So," Whitcomb said. "So, the killer cut through the jugular and the blood spurted on him," Sanders said. "Or her." "I don't think it was a woman," Sanders said. "It takes some strength to get the knife completely through the neck." Whitcomb looked through the photographs and nodded. "Let's sit down, have some tea, and go through the evidence," Whitcomb said. "Righto, DCI Whitcomb, and maybe a biscuit. I'm famished," Sanders said. D.C. Connors was instructed not to interrupt the other two officers while they were locked away in the library. He was to continue the all-important work of chatting with the help. Connors nodded seriously and did as he was told. He was especially interested in chatting with the maid who had found old Mrs. Ainsley. She was young, pretty, and available. "Your thoughts," Whitcomb started. "William Ainsley, the eldest. He and his brother Rupert have a consulting business. Legal experts, they call themselves. They have a scrubby little office off of the high street, and they consult 2 times a week. They bring in less money than you pay me," Sanders said, grinning at her dad. "The Queen pays you," he said. "Right. South. They basically live off of their trust fund while living here for free." "The daughter?" "Estella. She was married for 20 years. Husband died in a motor accident 3 years ago. She also has a trust fund. She also lives here for free." "I have a feeling that the mother didn't want them here," Whitcomb said. "Probably true. Look at these photographs. The mother didn't have a picture of any of her kids, but she has several of her late husband. The kids all have a picture of their mother. It's the exact same picture. Someone had copies made of a photograph, stuck them in nice silver frames, and hey presto, job done. One of them is a murderer." "True. I plump for one of the boys, Dad. They have the muscle to carry it off." "I'm not your dad right now. Also, whoever the killer is has bloody clothes to dispose of and a guilty conscience to assuage." Sanders nodded, then looked at her dad. She knew what was coming. "Did you ask them?" Whitcomb nodded. "And?" "William claims that Rupert had to have done it. Rupert swears that Estella has a murderous streak in her and that she did it. Estella knows in her heart that William is the type to kill the old lady." "Convenient," Sanders said. "Quite. So, we need to find some bloody clothes. Maybe try to get one of the staff to tell us more than they have so far," Sanders said. A voice spoke from the entrance to the library. "I don't reckon you'll find any bloody clothes, or the killer." Sanders and Whitcomb looked up, surprised. Surprise turned to amazement. D.C. Connors strode into the library and sat down, looking at his comrades. "Explain yourself, Connors," Whitcomb said severely. He didn't like that Connor had come into the library unawares, and he especially didn't like what Connors said. Connors plopped a book on the table, leaned forward, and spoke. "I was questioning that maid what saw the body. Jenny, you see. Strolling through the garden. I saw you 2 lovebirds." Sanders poked at Connors. "Like I says," Connors continued, unperturbed. "I was asking her about this and that. Lovely girl. We're going to the cinema Sunday afternoon. That's her afternoon off." "Connors, be a good lad and act like a copper," Whitcomb said sternly. "Right. So we get to talking about books. She has this cracking good book here, and she hands it to me. It's a murder mystery set on a train. The Oriental Express." "The Orient Express," Sanders said, reading the title. "That one, yeah. Anyway, what happened was, there's a murder on the train. Turns out all the people on the train had a hand in killing this bloke what killed a baby. This dandified detective figures it out. Frenchman, I think. Belgian," Whitcomb muttered. "So there's the story. The book belongs to the family. Jenny tells me that all the kids read it. The butler, too. Okay, so we continue to walk. I find a burn pile near the gardener's cottages. I dig through it and find burnt clothes. I tell her I got to get back and tell you. So we start back. Well, soon as we leave, I spot a gardener stoking up that fire again. I rush back, but it's too late. Everything is ashes by now." "Uh-huh. Continue." Whitcomb said softly. He had a sinking feeling in the pit of his stomach. Well, sir, then there's the lawyer chap. The what? The lawyer chappie for the old lady. The old lady called him on the blower and told him to step on down here on Wednesday. She wanted to substantially alternate her will. Alter. Yes, sir, that one. The kids all were there in the living room and they all heard the call to the lawyer chap. So did the butler. And then the kids all go to the library and shut the door. They're in there for a couple of hours, which is strange, Jenny says, because they don't really like each other all that much. South, that's that. Whitcomb and Sanders nodded, deep dejection on their faces. They were all in on it, including the help. Yes, sir. Jenny tells me the old lady was miserly and didn't pay them much at all, but the kids always gave them money to help them out. Jenny in on it too? Sanders asked. I reckon so, but I still like her. We're stepping out and don't try to stop me, Connors said determinedly. She's guilty of murder, Whitcomb said. I don't reckon she stuck the old lady, Connors said. She knows who did it, boy. I reckon I'm fine with that. I have to let you go then. I can't have a man on the force who knows wrongdoing and lets it go. Connors nodded. I'll work for my dad. Good money to be had in fixing automobiles. It all fit. Everyone colluded to kill the old lady. Everyone was guilty. Nothing, though, could be proven. The murderers were known, yet escaped the justice of the law. They did not escape karmic justice, however. Within a year, all of the siblings were dead. Both boys died from eating tainted fish paste. The woman fell down the stairs at the mansion and died of a broken neck. All of the deaths were suspicious, but nothing could be proven. Curiously, Jenny produced evidence in the form of letters from her father and her mother, a former scullery maid at the Ainsley residence, that showed she was the illegitimate daughter of the late Mr. Ainsley. These letters were produced a few days after the death of the last sibling. She inherited everything. Jenny and ex-PC Connors were married soon thereafter. DCY Whitcomb and WPC Sanders did not attend the wedding, of course. They did not care to consort with murderers. The corpse in the city. The car comes to a halt at the far edge of the car park behind the bank. Tom sits quietly for a moment, as if in a trance, eyes forward. Only his left arm moves as he pulls on the handbrake. His eyes drop, focusing on his finger, pressing the button to release the boot lid. Slowly, he turns his head and glares. Are you going to help me or not? Jim lets out a puff of breath, leans his elbow on the car door, and stands up. His shoes crunch on the dark gravel. The car park is deserted. With wide eyes scanning the area, he moves to the rear of the car and begins wrestling with the wheelchair. This thing's worse than a deck chair. Jim whacks the wheelchair onto the ground and rubs his hands across the seat. As he finally gets it unraveled and stable, Tom opens the rear passenger side door and unclips the seat belt that is holding his Uncle Charlie upright. There is now an urgency in his manner. His breath comes in short, sharp bursts as he scurries round the back of the car, slams the boot shut, and then crawls along the back seat toward Uncle Charlie. Line the chair up, Jim. You pull and I'll shove. Tom places one palm on Uncle Charlie's shoulder, one on his hip, groans and pushes. Jim tugs on a resistant arm and leg. Eventually, Uncle Charlie lands with a flop on the seat of the wheelchair. Jim tugs at the black overcoat to straighten him up, tucks in his arms, and lifts his feet onto the footrest. The sound of 4 doors and the boot closing echoes around the vacant car park and surrounding tall buildings. Yellow lights flash, showing the car is now securely locked. Standing back, Tom inspects his Uncle Charlie. "What does he look like?" "Dead," says Jim. "Pull his hat down over his face a bit more." Jim grabs the rim of the dark brown trilby and forces it over Charlie's head, then tilts it forward, covering Charlie's eyes. Tom takes another look and nods his approval. Gathering the strap from the back of the footrest, he buckles in his uncle's legs and then wraps a green tartan blanket tightly around them. He places a second blanket across his uncle's lap, covering his uncle's hands, and tucks that securely in down the sides. He straightens his back and breathes out a satisfactory sigh. "That'll do. I'm not happy doing this," says Jim. Tom's head spins round. "What? I'm not happy." "Well, you're a bit late telling me that. If you want some of the money, then you'd better start feeling happy right now." Jim mumbles under his breath, snatches the handles of the wheelchair, and begins pushing it across the loose tarmac of the car park toward the exit. His breathing becomes labored as the wheels spin in every direction. Charlie's head bobs up and down, loosening the trilby. Tom reaches over to straighten it out as Jim marches onwards toward the smooth pavement and the bank entrance. "I'll do all the talking. You just agree with me if they say anything to you." The blood drains from Jim's face. He says nothing. The 2 men push the wheelchair into the bank and join the queue. Jim hums to himself. Tom prods him. Jim stops humming. Tom fiddles with his Uncle Charlie's hat and the buttons of his overcoat. "Are you all right there, Charlie? Won't be long now, and we can get you home for a nice cuppa." Jim stares at Tom in disbelief. Tom kicks Jim in the shins. "Ouch." "Next." The cashier's voice booms across the interior of the bank. "Can we withdraw some money for my Uncle Charlie, please?" Tom points to Uncle Charlie in the wheelchair as he hands over the slip of paper. "Is he all right?" says the cashier. "He's had a stroke." "Sorry to hear that. It's a lot of money. We don't normally deal in such vast sums. He's going into a home tomorrow, and he needs the money to buy bits and pieces. You know what it's like. The care homes take all your dosh." "I do indeed." The cashier smiles. "If you'd care to wait, I'll sort this out for you. I see your uncle has already signed the slip." "Well done, Uncle Charlie." Tom bends over the wheelchair and pats the knees covered by the blanket. Charlie does not move. The cashier returns, stamps 3 sheets of paper, smiles, and hands over a large envelope full of notes through the slit underneath the protective glass. "Next. Come on, Jim. Let's get out of here." Tom grabs the handles of the wheelchair, spins it round, and heads for the exit. Jim scuttles along behind as Tom races along the pavement back toward the car park. Tom turns the wheelchair round, tips it up onto the two back wheels, and drags it across the undulating ground. "We did it, Jim. We did it." Tom lets out a muffled laugh as he squeezes Jim's biceps. "Now, let's get the bastard back in the car." Tom checks the car park for pedestrians, then grabs the shoulders of his uncle. Jim unbuckles the legs and takes hold of the ankles. Between them, the two men heave the motionless mass into the car and slide it along the back seat. Jim spreads the two blankets on top and throws the wheelchair into the boot, then sinks into the passenger seat. The engine revs as Tom's white knuckles grip the steering wheel. The car speeds out the exit as the spinning tires kick up black tarmac. "What are you going to do with Uncle Charlie?" says Jim. "We've got to put him where they can't find him. There's a skip over there." Jim pointed. "Don't be daft. What about one of those giant green bins? There's one outside the Dog and Badger. Are you mad? We can't just dump him anywhere. The police will find him. It's got to be somewhere. No one knows. We're going back to my place now, and we'll get rid of the knobhead later tonight. We've got to do it soon, before he turns black and smells." Okay. Tom stops the car in front of the garage, while Jim jumps out and opens the doors. The car shunts forward. Tom switches off the engine and gets out. He helps Jim secure the garage doors, and then they both go into the house. Jim sinks into the nearest armchair and immediately falls asleep. Tom races upstairs and jumps in the shower. He looks at the clock. They've got to be on the move before midnight. Tom carries the two suitcases downstairs and places them by the front door. He nudges Jim awake. In whispers, he tells Jim to hurry and organize himself, as they must deal with Uncle Charlie on the way to the airport. Jim rubs his eyes, goes into the kitchen, drinks a glass of water, grabs a biscuit, and then goes into the downstairs toilet. When he comes out, Tom tells him to take the two suitcases and put them in the back of the car, and not to forget the coil of rope that is hanging on a hook just inside the garage door. Jim puts the two suitcases and the coil of rope in the car. Tom starts the engine and backs out. He stops the car in the driveway, gets out, and checks the front door and closes the garage doors. "Where are we going, Tom?" "To that new industrial estate they're building on the outskirts of the city. It's on the way to the airport." They arrive at the new industrial estate, and Tom parks in a mud-filled lay-by near some railings at the end of the no-through road. "Get the rope and tie it tight round that shithead's chest. Make sure you go under his arms with it." Jim takes hold of the rope, pushes it under Charlie's back, and ties it in a tight knot over his chest. Tom takes a jemmy from the boot of the car and lifts a manhole cover and drags it to one side, close to the railings. Tom grabs the rope and lugs Charlie out of the car. Charlie hits the ground with a loud thud. Tom and Jim take an in-breath and look around. Silence. Tom continues dragging Charlie across the mud to the waiting hole. Now you help me lower him in. Slowly, they eke out the rope and lower Charlie into the hole. Then secure the end of the rope onto a girder near the top and replace the cover. Will he be all right? Says Jim. What do you think? Says Tom. What'll I do with the blankets and the wheelchair? Says Jim. Tom points to some bushes behind the car. Throw them over there. Jim takes the blankets and slings them over the bushes, and then heaves the wheelchair in the same direction. Come on, Jim. We've got an hour's drive to the airport yet. Tom sits back in the seat on the airplane and sips his red wine. Jim's head falls forward, and loud snoring pours forth from it. Tom and Jim pull up a stool at the beach bar, their favorite haunt from previous Spanish excursions. Relaxed and smiling, they order a beer and proceed to quench their thirst for the high life. A heavy hand on their shoulder makes them jump as the tanned, bulky torso of a man stands between them. Don't normally see you two idiots here this time of year. Tom flops his head forward, clearly relieved to see it's a friendly face. Hi, Jack. No, you're right. Just visiting for a bit. And where's Charlie? The old bugger hasn't snuffed it, has he? Tom coughs. Jim swallows hard. No, he's fine. Didn't want to come. We've left him hanging around back home. Cia Reyes. Murder case. The doorbell chime filled the anxiety-spilt air. Clemency and I both exchanged nervous looks. We both knew who it was. I walked up to the door while she arranged a few drinks. Oh, welcome. Mr. Wright, please take a seat. I greeted the young man. He was wearing a blue suit and tie, left parted hair, and a shaved beard. Mr. Wright sat comfortably on the foam, glaring at the drinks in front of him, but did not dare to have one. So you're Clemency Cook? He asked, cocking a brow towards me. I left a foolish chuckle and pointed at Clemency. No, she is. The lawyer's balls danced from me to Clemency's face while she stood near the dining table, trying hard not to blush. After all, Mr. Wright was a handsome youth. Mr. Wright adjusted his collars and asked Clemency to sit in front of him. He cleared his throat and began. Your name is Clemency Bailey Cook, am I right? Yes, sir. The gentleman forwarded his hand and was replied with a firm shake of Clemency's. My name is Ian Wright, senior lawyer from Rake Walker's. Am I right that you saw, He glanced at some papers and continued. Cia Reyes being brutally murdered in front of your eyes? Yes, sir. When did this happen? Around 1 a.m. on August 21st. What were you doing at such an odd time at Chargine Road, Memphis? Clemency pressed her lips into a thin line and looked at me. I signaled her to spill the truth. The night before, my boyfriend broke up with me. So in tears and scars, I decided to hit the club. On my way back, I saw, Ian nodded, as if he had gone through the same and understood her pain. Would you like to give some details? I could tell Clemency was not liking this. She never wanted to see the lawyer. It was me who pushed her. As a responsible citizen, And of course, when you are innocent, you should not fear to reach the hands of laws. It is for the betterment of all. Clemency took a deep breath and said, I was all head over heels with wine and was fumbling through the dark streets when I saw them, harshly stabbing the teen, while her screams echoed all around the place. The murderers saw me, but I was drunk, so they might not have expected me to remember anything. But that's what makes me different. No matter how unconsciously befuddled I am, I remember everything. Mr. Wright bent a bit forward. His eyes sparkled a doubtful glint. Do you remember the Terminator's face? Yes, but I didn't know who it was. Ian took out some inked photos from his bag and displayed them all together, like a pack of cards. Any one of these? Clemency thought for a second, biting her lips when she finally pointed at a man's photo, disguised in a scruffy beard and smooth eyes. He wore dazzling spectacles and a cowboy hat. Hard to believe he was cruel enough to cut his employer's salary. Murder was far off. Just one, Ian said, analyzing the chosen photo. No, there were two, but you only have one man's photo. Okay, we will work that out. Ian turned towards me and said, bring this lady to the court tomorrow. She will be a powerful witness. I nodded my head in agreement and waved the officer goodbye. After a few hugs and words of appreciation to Clemency, I walked the way to my house. I'll pick you up tomorrow for the trial. My last words read, Chagda. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Calling the case of the murder of Sia Reyes versus Charles Young. Are both sides ready? The judge's thundering voice alarmed all the ears. I have never been in a trial before, so it was all new. Yes, my honor, came a reply from Ian and his opposition. Your honor, and ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the defendant has been charged with the crime of murdering a 17-year-old girl named Sia Reyes from St. Crim's School in the middle of the Charjan Road, Memphis, on August 21st. Your Honor, I would like to call my first witness, Alice Reyes, elder sister of Sia Reyes, for a few questions. Let Alice Reyes be presented in the court, the judge announced, thumping his gavel on the wood. Alice Reyes gets presented. I am so sorry about your loss, Miss Reyes. As per my information, you live with your... He gets uncomfortable for a second, but hides it with a cough. Late sister and your mother, about 60 kilometers from Charjan Road. Am I correct? Yes, came a sore voice from her throat. What made her go to the Charjan Road? She got a call in the middle of the night from his friend Charles Young, saying he had met with an accident and needed immediate help, and he did not know who else to call. Ian turned towards the judge and said, My lord, as you can see, Sia was cleverly trapped into coming to the Charjan Road with a 60-kilometer drive without giving it a second thought. Objection, my lord, came a voice from the lawyer in defense. Objection sustained, said the judge. The person in opposition stood up. and said, "My honor, my client, Charles Young, did not call Sia Reyes in the middle of the night. They have not been in contact for a couple of days now. Here is the call, History of Sia Reyes," handing the bailiff the proof. The judge nodded as he went through the papers. "My lord, I would like to call my other witness, Miss Clemency Cook, through which it would be clear that Mr. Young was involved in the murder," Ian said. "Let Clemency Cook be presented in the court," the judge repeated, hammering his gavel. I was sitting among the public, and I could feel the environment tense. A small smirk played on Ian's face. "So, Ms. Clemency, were you present on the Sharjah Road around 1 a.m. on 21st August? "Yes," Clemency replied. I could feel every nerve in my body jolt up. I was really getting excited. Now that famous Charles gotta get infamous. I felt my blood screaming, "Yuppie," from the inside. It feels so good when guilty people get punished. "Did you see Charles Young brutally murder Sia Reyes?" Everybody's brows lifted up at the second. "No, I did not see anything except a lifeless body lying in the middle of the street." I was left shaken. Ian and I glanced at each other in shock. "What?" "But during our discussion, you said..." Ian tried to protest. "Enough. Any other points from any side?" The judge yawped. The court fell silent. The gavel declared the adjournment of the court, leaving everyone standing in their seats, ready to get out of the courtroom. Clemency was smart to get out fast, but I caught her arm just in time and pulled her in a corner. "What was that? Why did you lie?" I said, trying to keep my voice low, but my temper was breaking its bounds. "What? Oh, right. Listen, girl, you're too innocent for this world. This world runs on money. I got paid for it. Now get lost. I have other work to do." A new voice inside of Clemency spoke. I couldn't believe she just said that, uprooting all my faith in law and humanity in just a couple of seconds. My eyes fell on Alice, who was staring at me as Clemency walked away. I was too shattered to face her. All I could do was mouth, "I am sorry. Thank you, everyone, for reading my story. I have never really attended any court session or have any idea how it works. It is based upon my understanding on basis of bits of information from movies and series. Please forgive me if my context is not similar to the actual process. Regards, Kea, the Cursed Town. Content warning. Murder, suicide." He walked up through the dusty road which led to the small town of Tamans. It was twilight, and a light wind was blowing. Far away, the crop plantations acquired a greenish-orange color due to the light of the sun. On the other side, one could catch a faint glimpse of the Temans Church, with its tall steeple standing majestically high up in the sky. The yellow-orange hue of the sky washed the town, and the muddy red road was illuminated with a touch of gradient yellow. The whole town looked peaceful, and surprisingly, nobody was outside their houses. He entered the town and looked at the banyan tree in front of him. It had remained much the same. He looked up at the houses and walked towards them. Darkness was falling now. The red-orange hue was slowly swept away, and a dark blue color entered, only with a touch of crimson at its bottom. Shadows fell here and there, creating a spooky atmosphere, and he quickened his pace, as if to avoid the evil spell cast by the shadows of the houses. The moon came up, not too bright, for clouds were starting to surround it from all sides. He glanced upwards and realized that he had to take shelter somewhere. Rainfall could occur any time now. He walked through the dusty and muddy road and looked here around for inns, but there were none. Finally, he found a big apartment, which was deserted. He let out a sigh of relief and walked up the stairs and entered the apartment. It was evident that the apartment was still under construction work. It was not completed. However, years of neglect had withered away the raw smell of the brick walls, and small plants could be seen, growing almost everywhere. All of them had a feeling of evil in them. The brick walls, the plants, the floors, and even the ceiling. It was like they had witnessed a lot of sad events and were telling him not to go further inside the house. The house itself was spooky, with its large corridors and almost no rooms. A huge, round staircase led to the other floors. The grayish appearance of the apartment matched perfectly with his gray and withered t-shirt and pants. He went up the staircase and reached the terrace. It was broad and wide, and one could see the beautiful town stretched before it. He looked down and was surprised to see an old woman with a lantern standing in the doorway of the apartment, waving her hands to call him. He descended the staircase and ran out of the apartment to meet the old woman. The woman was short in stature and had gray hair, with sometimes a tint of black in them. Her face was wrinkled, and she looked at him through her cat-green eyes, piercingly. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. "I am a visitor, and I came here for certain business matters. I could not find any inn to spend the night in, so I came here," he said. She looked at him suspiciously, and then said, "Okay, you better come with me. This place is not good, especially at night." He nodded his head and followed the old woman. He was cold with fear and could not understand what was happening. He followed her till they reached a cottage, and the old woman asked him to enter. He went inside and enjoyed the warmth of the fire which was lit. He sat down on a sofa, and the woman came to her with a candle. She placed the candle on the table and handed him a plate. "You must be hungry. Here, have some food. You better not go to the apartment anymore." "Why?" he asked. "It's a long story. I have seen too much of this world to remember happy deeds. Most are evil." "What do you actually mean? Do you want to hear?" "Yes, I do." She took a long, deep breath and then began. "Long ago, when I was about 17 years of age, there used to live a plantation owner named Hamilton. He had a lot of money and was very rich. You see those plantations? All those were Sir Hamilton's. He was not only rich, but kind and generous too. He used to donate with open hands. He had a beautiful wife, 4 daughters, and 1 son. However, naturally, his neighbors were very jealous of him and despised him. He did not care that much for that. But one day, his neighbors attacked his family. His daughters were of almost my age then, and the son was only a baby. They killed his daughters and his wife, but somehow Hamilton and his son were able to escape. "Why did not Hamilton inform the police?" he asked. "There was no evidence against the neighbors. He had nothing to do. I later heard that he had fled somewhere to Canada." "But how does it relate to the apartment?" The old woman sighed. Her green eyes glistened, and she said, "The apartment was being made by Hamilton. He wanted to turn it into a hospital." "Yes, but how does that matter anyway?" Rain had started falling heavily, and the fire and candle went out. The 2 people were left in total darkness. However, he could still see the old woman's eyes glistening. The old woman said, "For the past few years, there had been a lot of suicides there. Many girls of around 16 to 17 years are committing suicide there. It all started with the daughter of Mrs. Morpin. She jumped from the terrace you were standing a few minutes ago. The second case was of Mrs. Rayon's daughter. She was found hanging from the chandelier one morning, her face white and terror-stricken. He was taken aback and looked at the old woman with wide and fearful eyes. Lightning struck, illuminating the whole room for a moment, and he could see the old woman's face, ugly, wrinkled with a strong, piercing glance, which was almost witch-like. He wanted to run out of the house, but some strange power kept him rooted to his seat. The old woman said, "You better go to sleep now. I guess you had a very tiresome day." The old woman showed him his bedroom, and he fell down on his bed, immediately asleep. The next morning, when he woke up, he could see the sun shining brilliantly outside. He heaved himself up and went to the living room. The old woman was preparing coffee. She handed him a cup, and he sat down on the sofa. He drank from the cup the delicious, thick cappuccino and felt refreshed. He almost forgot all the horrible incidents from yesterday night. "Where do you want to go today? I can show you the way. It is evident that you are new to this place, as you were talking about inns in here. I have heard about Kingsman's Place here. Can you please take me there?" "Kingsman's Place? Okay, I will. It is a business center here. When do you want to go? About 9:30. What do you say? Please prepare a packed lunch for me. Of course. Get ready then. He went back to his bedroom and took out his suitcase. He looked at himself in the mirror. He was middle-aged, but still, he looked pretty young. He brought out a coat, shirt, and pant, and put it on. He looked the perfect businessman. After having breakfast, the two went out. On the way, they came across the Flint River. There he saw some girls whispering and talking together. One of them was extremely beautiful. Her fair skin with an orange tint made one remember pure milk. Her eyes were a deep blue, and she had beautiful black eyelashes. Her cheeks were pink, and her lips were a light red. Her mass of curls was thrown at her back, and she wore a pretty green dress. Her hands were well-toned, and her legs were slender and well-shaped. She looked a pretty picture. He stared at her for some time, and then she turned to the old woman, and pointing to the girl, he asked, "Who is that girl?" The old woman glanced at the girl and then said, "She is Mr. Trudeau's daughter." "Pretty, isn't she?" "Yes," he said. "What is her age?" "About 17. He sighed and gestured at the old woman to move forward. They reached Kingsman S. Place, and the old woman left him there with his lunchbox. He did not wait there. As soon as the old woman was out of sight, he started running. He did not stop until he reached the old building. He entered and went up to the terrace. The terrace was absolutely empty. Despite being so large, the parapets were very low, and there were high risks of falling to death in case of an accidental slip. Unlike the rest of the house, almost no plants were there on the terrace, due to some unknown reason. He roamed here and there on the terrace. He stepped very carefully, and whenever he looked down, he was sick at the sight of houses so far down below. He hated heights and was afraid of them. He went downstairs and waited. "You know, Laura, I will go to Grandma Fontaine's house today." The words kept ringing in his mind. To reach Grandma Fontaine's house, she had to cross this building. There she was coming, alone. Nobody was with her. He waited silently, and as soon as she came in front of the apartment, he gripped her hand and pulled her inside. Before she could scream, he put a handkerchief under her nose, and smelling the chloroform, she fell unconscious. He now prepared for it. He dragged her upstairs to the terrace and carefully washed her face. He then threw her down the parapet, and she landed with a loud thud sound. Dead. Yes, she was dead. Blood was flowing from her, and her pretty face was peaceful. He quickly fled from the place before anybody could see him. He did not return to the old woman's house. He kept walking towards the outskirts of the town. It would take him almost 3 hours to get out. He had seen his own sisters and mother get killed in front of him. Those Morpins, Rayons, Trudeaus, and Greys have killed them out of jealousy. He and his father had somehow fled. But after some time, his father also died. He died saying, "Kill Morpin, kill Trudeau, kill Rayon, kill Grey. Don't let them live." He had done that. He had killed all of them, except Grey's daughter. He would be back for her after the next 4 years. Yes, he would not let her live. They do not deserve to live. They had destroyed his life. He would destroy theirs. He would not let them be happy when his own happiness had been snatched away from him. Never. He looked back at the town. It was twilight yet again. The town looked peaceful, but he could hear faint sounds of crying. Let them cry. They will have to cry again after 4 years. He turned and walked away from the town as darkness fell and made the town silent.